The iron gates of Ashcombe Manor slammed shut with a finality that echoed across the valley. Elspeth stood in the courtyard, her silk wedding dress already grey with mud and rain. Above her, on the stone balcony, Alaric Vane looked down with eyes as cold as the winter wind. "You were a debt I paid to a gambler," he said, his voice carrying no emotion. "But I will not pay for another man's sin. Begone before the moon rises." Elspeth's hands trembled as she clutched the small travelling bag that Mrs. Crowle had hastily packed. Behind the Duke, candles flickered in the manor windows, warm and golden. She would never see that warmth again. "I swear to you, I have done nothing wrong," she whispered, though she knew he could not hear her from such a distance. Alaric turned his back and disappeared into the manor. The servants who had greeted her just 3 weeks ago as their new duchess now averted their eyes. The carriage that would take her north waited like a coffin on wheels. This was England in 1798. A woman's reputation was her only currency, and Elspeth Rowan had just been declared bankrupt by the one man whose word mattered more than truth. 3 months earlier, Elspeth had stood in the drawing room of her family's crumbling estate in Somerset, listening to her father destroy what remained of their lives. "The Duke of Ashcombe has agreed to the match," Silas Rowan announced, his hands shaking as he poured himself another glass of brandy before noon. "We are saved." Elspeth looked at the faded wallpaper, the empty spaces where paintings once hung, the worn carpet that no longer disguised the creaking floorboards beneath. Saved was a generous word for what this marriage represented. "Does he know about the debts?" she asked quietly. "He knows enough," her father replied, not meeting her eyes. "He requires a wife from a good family. You require security. It is a suitable arrangement. Suitable. Not loving. Not kind. Just suitable." When Alaric Vane arrived for their first meeting, Elspeth understood immediately why he had chosen a bride from a desperate family. He did not want love. He did not want conversation. He wanted a transaction, clean and uncomplicated. He was tall, with dark hair that fell just slightly too long, as if he could not be bothered with fashion. His eyes were a startling grey blue, the colour of storm clouds over the sea. Everything about him suggested control, from the way he stood to the way he measured his words before speaking. "Miss Rowan," he said with a slight bow, "I trust your father has explained the terms." "He has, Your Grace." "Good. We shall marry within the month. I have business in London that cannot wait longer." That was the extent of their courtship. No walks in the garden. No letters. No attempt to know her beyond confirming that she could read, manage a household, and would not embarrass him in society. The wedding took place in the small chapel at Ashcombe. Elspeth wore her mother's dress, altered to fit her slimmer frame. Alaric wore black, as if attending a funeral rather than a wedding. He spoke his vows without inflection, slipped the ring onto her finger without meeting her eyes, and kissed her cheek with the enthusiasm of a man fulfilling a tedious obligation. The wedding breakfast was attended by local gentry who whispered behind their fans about the Duke's strange choice. Everyone knew he had been engaged before to the brilliant and beautiful Cordelia Wynne. Everyone knew that engagement had ended in scandal and Cordelia's mysterious death 2 years ago, and everyone wondered why Alaric Vane would choose to marry again, and so poorly. Elspeth tried not to hear them. She tried to believe that time might soften him, that patience and kindness might build something resembling companionship. She was wrong. On their wedding night, Alaric escorted her to her chambers, bowed formally, and left without a word. She waited in the elaborate bedroom, wearing the nightgown that had been part of her trousseau, but he never returned. In the morning, a maid informed her that the Duke had left for London before dawn and would return within a fortnight. Elspeth spent those 2 weeks learning the vast, cold manor that was now her home. She met with the housekeeper, reviewed the accounts, walked the gardens, and ate dinner alone in a dining room that could seat 40. The servants were respectful, but distant. They took their cues from their master, and their master had made it clear that the new Duchess was to be tolerated, not embraced. When Alaric finally returned, he barely acknowledged her presence. He spent his days in the study, his evenings in the library, and his nights in a separate wing of the house. Elspeth began to understand that she had not married a man. She had married a ghost. Then the letters arrived. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in late October. Elspeth was in the conservatory, tending to the roses that had been neglected since the previous Duchess, Alaric's mother, had passed away 5 years ago. Mrs. Crowell, the head housekeeper, brought it to her on a silver tray. "This came for His Grace, your Grace," she said, her expression unreadable. "But it is addressed in a lady's hand. I thought you might prefer to deliver it yourself." Elspeth took the letter. The handwriting was elegant, the paper expensive. No return address. She found Alaric in the library, surrounded by ledgers and correspondence. He looked up when she entered, his expression shifting from concentration to cold politeness. "Yes. A letter arrived for you," she said, holding it out. He took it without looking at her, broke the seal, and began to read. As his eyes moved down the page, his face changed. The careful control slipped, revealing something raw underneath. Anger, pain, betrayal. "Where did this come from?" he demanded. "I don't know. It was delivered this morning." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Who brought it?" "A messenger, I assume." "Mrs. Crowell received it." Alaric stared at the letter as if it were a serpent in his hand. Then he looked at Elspeth, and for the first time since their wedding, she saw genuine emotion in his eyes. It was not affection. It was suspicion. "You know nothing about this?" "Of course not. What does it say?" He folded the letter carefully and placed it in his pocket. "It is no concern of yours." But it was. Over the next 3 weeks, 4 more letters arrived, each one deepening the shadow that fell over Alaric's face. He stopped speaking to her entirely. He began locking his study door, and he started drinking alone late into the night. Elspeth tried to continue her routines, but the atmosphere in the manor shifted. Servants whispered in corners. Mrs. Crowell watched her with something like pity. And Alaric looked at her as if she were a stranger who had broken into his home. Then one morning, she woke, feeling ill. The nausea came in waves, and she barely made it to the basin before retching. Mrs. Crowell found her there, pale and shaking. "How long has this been happening, Your Grace?" the housekeeper asked gently. "A week, perhaps. I thought it was something I ate." Mrs. Crowell's expression softened. "I think you know what this is, my lady." Elspeth's hands went to her stomach. "But we have not. He has never. I know, child. But His Grace may not believe that." And she was right. When Dr. Harrow confirmed the pregnancy 3 days later, Alaric was summoned to hear the news. He stood in the doorway of Elspeth's sitting room, his face carved from stone. "Congratulations, Your Grace," Dr. Harrow said warmly. "You are to be a father. The child should arrive in late spring." Alaric's gaze moved from the doctor to Elspeth. There was no joy, no surprise, only a terrible, cold certainty. "Leave us," he said quietly. Dr. Harrow hesitated, glancing at Elspeth. She nodded slightly, and he departed with obvious reluctance, leaving them alone. The silence stretched until Elspeth could no longer bear it. "I know what you are thinking," she said, "but you are wrong." "Am I?" Alaric's voice was soft, dangerous. "You claim to carry my child, yet I have not touched you since our wedding night. Explain that." "There was no wedding night. You left me alone." "Precisely my point." Elspeth stood, her legs unsteady. "Then how do you explain this child?" Alaric pulled a folded letter from his coat. "Perhaps the same way these explain your character." "Your lover has been quite detailed in his correspondence." "My lover?" "I have no lover. I have barely left this house." He threw the letter at her feet. "Read it. Read how you met him in London before our marriage. How you promised to run away together. How you used me to save your father from ruin while planning to leave me for him." Elspeth picked up the letter with trembling hands. The handwriting was feminine, the ink slightly smudged, but the words were devastating. "My dearest Elspeth, I count the hours until we can be together again. This charade with the Duke serves its purpose, but my heart belongs only to you. Once your father's debts are settled, we shall leave England forever. He will never know the child you carry is mine." The letter was signed with initials she did not recognize. "C.B. This is not my handwriting," she said, her voice breaking, "and these words are not mine. Someone is lying to you." 5 letters, Elspeth. 5 detailed letters describing meetings and promises and plans. Are you saying someone fabricated all of them? Yes. I swear to you, on my mother's grave, I have been faithful. I have been alone. Alaric's laugh was bitter. Faithful. You do not even know the meaning of the word. But I am done being made a fool. I was humiliated once by a woman I trusted. I will not endure it again. Please. Elspeth reached for him, but he stepped back as if her touch would burn him. Please, just listen to me. I am finished listening. Pack your things. You leave for the north tomorrow. The north? Why? Because I will not have you here, and I will not have society witnessing this shame. There is a hunting lodge in the Highlands. You will stay there until the child is born. After that, we shall see. Elspeth felt the room tilt. You are sending me away? Alone? While I carry your child? It is not my child, Alaric said coldly, but it will bear my name, because the alternative is scandal that benefits no one. Consider yourself fortunate I am not seeking an annulment. You cannot do this. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. I can do whatever I wish. I am the Duke of Ashcombe, and you are nothing but a gambler's daughter who thought she could deceive me. Be grateful I am allowing you even this mercy. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything. The carriage left Ashcombe before dawn. Elspeth watched through the rain-streaked window as the manor disappeared behind the hills. Beside her, Mrs. Crowell sat in grim silence, her weathered hands folded in her lap. You did not have to come, Elspeth said quietly. His Grace did not give me a choice, Mrs. Crowell replied. He said someone must ensure you arrive safely and manage the household. I volunteered before he could assign someone less sympathetic. Thank you. The older woman's expression softened slightly. I have served the Vane family for 30 years, Your Grace. I know cruelty when I see it. Whatever those letters claim, I do not believe you capable of such deception. Tears burned in Elspeth's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough in the darkness of her room. Now she needed to be strong, for herself and for the child she carried. The journey north took 5 days. They stopped at coaching inns along the way, where Elspeth kept her hood raised and avoided conversation. Mrs. Crowell handled all arrangements, protecting her from curious stares and whispered speculation. As they travelled deeper into Scotland, the landscape changed. Rolling hills gave way to harsh moorland, and the air grew colder. On the 5th day, they turned onto a narrow track that led through dense forest. The trees pressed close on either side, their branches forming a canopy that blocked the weak November sun. "How much further?" Elspeth asked. "Not long now, my lady." Another hour passed before they emerged from the forest onto a wind-swept plateau. And there, crouching against the grey sky like a wounded animal, stood the Lodge of Thorn. It was not the romantic hunting lodge Elspeth had imagined. It was a squat stone building with small windows and a roof that sagged in the middle. Smoke rose from one chimney, suggesting someone had prepared for their arrival. But there was no warmth in the sight. The carriage stopped in the small courtyard. A young man emerged from the lodge, bundled in wool and looking half frozen. "Your Grace," he said with a bow, "I'm Dougal, the groundskeeper. We've readied the main rooms as best we could." "Thank you," Elspeth managed. Inside, the lodge was marginally better than its exterior suggested. The main hall had a massive fireplace, where a fire blazed bravely against the cold. The furniture was simple but sturdy, and someone had made an effort to clean away years of dust and neglect. "There are 4 bedrooms upstairs," Dougal explained. "We've prepared 2. The others need more work. The kitchen is functional, and we have supplies from the village for the winter." "The village?" Elspeth asked. "How far?" 10 miles east, my lady. Thorn's End. Small place, but they have what you might need. I go once a week for provisions." Mrs. Crowell was already assessing the space with a critical eye. "We'll need more firewood. And those windows need proper sealing before the real cold comes." "Aye, ma'am. I'll see to it." As Dougal left to unload the carriage, Elspeth walked to the window. Beyond the courtyard lay nothing but moor stretching to the horizon. No other buildings, no roads, just wind and heather and the distant outline of mountains. This was her prison, not locked with bars, but with miles of emptiness that might as well be walls. That first night, Elspeth lay in bed, listening to the wind howl around the lodge. Her hand rested on her stomach, where the child grew in secret, unaware of the hatred that had sent them here. "I will protect you," she whispered into the darkness. "Whatever happens, I will keep you safe." But she did not know if she believed it. Back at Ashcombe Manor, Alaric Vane stood in Elspeth's empty bedroom. The servants had already stripped the bed and removed her personal belongings, leaving behind only the heavy furniture that had belonged to his mother. He should have felt relief. The deception was ended. The betrayal addressed. His home was his own again. Instead, he felt hollow. On the dressing table lay a piece of embroidery she had been working on. He picked it up, examining the delicate stitches that formed a pattern of roses and thorns. She had been making it for the manor's drawing room, hoping to replace the faded curtains his mother had commissioned decades ago. It was beautiful, precise, patient work that must have taken hours. He dropped it back onto the table and turned away. In his study, the 5 letters sat in a locked drawer. He had read them so many times he could recite them from memory. The meetings in London gardens. The promises of escape. The crude details of physical intimacy that made his stomach turn. The handwriting matched Elspeth's. He had compared it to the household notes she had written. The signature was hers. And yet, there was something about the letters that did not fit. The language was too bold, too confident. Elspeth was quiet, careful with her words. She did not speak of passion or desire. She barely spoke at all. But then, perhaps that was the point. Perhaps her silence had been strategy rather than nature. He poured himself a drink and stared into the fire. The flames reminded him of another fire, 2 years ago, when he had burned every letter and gift from Cordelia Wynne after learning the truth about her betrayal. Cordelia had been everything Elspeth was not. Brilliant, beautiful, commanding attention wherever she went. Their engagement had been London's most celebrated match, but behind her dazzling smile, she had been conducting an affair with Cassian Moorcroft, a charming wastrel who promised her adventure and freedom. When Alaric discovered them together, Cordelia had not even bothered to deny it. She had laughed, told him he was boring and cold, and left with Cassian that very night. 3 months later, she was dead, drowned in the Thames under circumstances the authorities called accidental, but everyone else called suicide. Alaric had not loved her by then. Love had died the moment he saw her in Cassian's arms. But her death still haunted him. The waste of it, the cruelty of her final words, the way she had made him feel like a fool for believing her. He had sworn never to be made a fool again. And yet here he was, his second wife carrying another man's child, just as Cordelia had been carrying Cassian's when she died, history repeating itself like a curse. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Enter. His butler, Finch, stepped inside. Forgive the intrusion, Your Grace. But you have a visitor, Mr. Thaddeus Blythe. Alaric's hand tightened on his glass. What does he want? He did not say, sir, but he seems quite insistent. Show him in. Thaddeus Blythe entered with the easy confidence of a man who knew he was not welcome but did not care. He was handsome in a practiced way, with golden hair and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Duke, he said with a slight bow. Thank you for seeing me at such a late hour. What do you want, Blythe? Straight to business. I appreciate that. He settled into a chair, uninvited. I heard about your recent domestic troubles, sending the new Duchess away so soon. Tongues are wagging. My marriage is not your concern. Ah, but it is. Blythe's smile widened. You see, I had a very interesting conversation with your father-in-law. Silas Rowan is quite talkative when he is deep in his cups. He told me about the letters you received, the ones that proved your wife's infidelity. Alaric's blood went cold. How do you know about that? Because I may have helped facilitate their delivery. Blythe examined his fingernails casually. For a price, of course. You? Not personally. But I know people who know people. It is remarkable what can be accomplished with the right connections and enough coin. Alaric set down his glass carefully. Are you confessing to forgery? I am confessing to nothing. I am simply suggesting that sometimes people see what they expect to see. You expected betrayal, so betrayal was provided. Quite convincing, was it not? Why would you do this? Blythe's expression hardened. Because Silas Rowan owed me money, a great deal of money. When you married his daughter, you paid his debts. But there were other debts he conveniently failed to mention. debts he promised to settle once his darling daughter secured her position as Duchess. When he failed to pay, I decided to ensure that position would not be quite as secure as he hoped. Alaric stood slowly. You destroyed an innocent woman's reputation for money. I destroyed nothing. You did that yourself. I merely provided the opportunity. Blythe rose as well. And now I am here to offer you a choice. You can continue believing those letters. Send your wife away, raise another man's bastard, and live with the guilt. Or you can pay me what Silas owes me, and I will tell you the truth about those letters. You just admitted they were false. Did I? Or did I simply suggest that possibility? Words are slippery things, Duke. What I can offer you is certainty. For a price. Alaric's hands clenched into fists. Get out! I'll give you 3 days to consider, Blythe said, moving toward the door. After that, I take my information elsewhere, perhaps to the London papers. They do love a good scandal. He left with a final mocking bow, leaving Alaric alone, with a rage so pure it burned away everything else. If Blythe was telling the truth, then Elspeth was innocent. The letters were forgeries. The pregnancy was his. And he had sent his wife and unborn child to freeze in the Scottish wilderness because he had been too proud and too damaged to see the truth. He reached for his coat, then stopped. What if Blythe was lying? What if this was another scheme to extract money from the vain Fortune? Going to Elspeth now, based on the word of a known blackmailer, would be foolish. He needed proof. He needed truth, and he needed it before winter sealed the roads to the north and made any journey impossible. December arrived at the Lodge of Thorn with merciless cold. Snow fell in thick curtains, piling against the doors and covering the moor in white silence. Elspeth woke each morning to frost on the inside of the windows and her breath misting in the air, despite the fire Mrs. Crowell kept burning through the night. Her pregnancy progressed with uncomfortable clarity. The sickness passed, but in its place came exhaustion and a growing heaviness that made simple tasks difficult. Mrs. Crowell watched over her with stern devotion, insisting she eat even when food held no appeal, forcing her to walk the halls for exercise when all she wanted was to sleep. You must stay strong, the housekeeper would say. For the child. The child. Elspeth tried to think of it as a person, her son or daughter, but it was difficult when she felt so alone. She had no mother to ask advice, no sisters to share fears with, just Mrs. Crowell's practical wisdom and the growing certainty that whatever happened when the baby came, Alaric would not be there to see it. She spent her days reading the few books available in the lodge, sewing baby clothes from fabric Mrs. Crowell found in storage, and watching the snow fall endlessly outside. At night, she lay awake wondering if Alaric ever thought of her, if he regretted his cruelty, if somewhere in his frozen heart there remained even a fragment of the man who might have loved her, given time. Probably not. One morning in mid-December, Dougal returned from Thorn's End with troubling news. "The villagers say the great freeze is coming," he announced, stamping snow from his boots. "Worst winter in 50 years. Roads will be impassable until spring." "How soon?" Mrs. Crowell asked. "Maybe a week, maybe less. I stocked as much as I could carry, but we should prepare for months without supplies." Elspeth looked at her swollen stomach. "The baby is due in April. We will be trapped here until then?" "Aye, my lady. But we have food, fuel, and each other. We will manage." That night, The temperature dropped so sharply that water in the buckets froze solid. Elspeth huddled near the fire, wrapped in every blanket she owned, and tried not to think about what would happen if she went into labor early with no doctor and no way to get help. "Do not borrow trouble," Mrs. Crowell said, as if reading her thoughts. "Women have been having babies in harsh conditions since the beginning of time. You are stronger than you know." "Am I? I let myself be sent here without fighting. I accepted every cruelty without protest. You survived. That is its own kind of strength." As the freeze settled over the moor, Elspeth began to understand what survival meant. It meant chopping ice from the well each morning. It meant rationing firewood carefully so they would not run out. It meant learning to cook simple meals over the hearth because the kitchen was too cold to use. It meant ignoring the ache in her back and the fear in her heart because there was no room for weakness when weakness meant death. She also began to understand something else. She was not useless. She was not weak. She had been raised to be decorative and obedient, but necessity was teaching her to be capable. When the roof began leaking in one of the unused bedrooms, she helped Dougal patch it with tar and boards. When Mrs. Crowell fell ill with a fever, Elspeth nursed her back to health despite her own exhaustion. When supplies ran low, she learned to make bread that was not elegant, but was filling and warm. And slowly, almost without noticing, she began to change. Her hands grew rough. Her face lost its softness. Her eyes developed a hardness that had not been there before. Ashcombe had made her into a decoration. The Highlands were making her into a woman who could endure. In London, Alaric Vane stood over a dying man and felt something close to relief. Cassian Moorcroft lay in a rented room above a tavern, his face wasted by consumption, his breathing shallow and laboured. The man who had stolen Cordelia Wynne and ruined Alaric's first engagement was finally paying the price for his dissolute life. "You came," Cassian rasped. "I did not think you would. Your message said you had information about my wife." "Your wife?" Cassian laughed, which turned into a wet cough. "Yes." Poor Elspeth. "Is it true you sent her away? What do you know about it?" "More than you think." He gestured weakly toward a small desk. "There is a box. Bring it here." Alaric retrieved the wooden box and placed it on the bed. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written in feminine handwriting. "Cordelia's letters," Cassian said. "She wrote to me constantly during your engagement. Every thought, every feeling, every plan to escape your cold bed and run away with me. I know this story. Why bring me here? Because someone else used that story." Cassian pulled out several letters and handed them to Alaric. "Look at these. Now look at the ones you received about your wife." Alaric compared them, and his blood turned to ice. The handwriting was identical. Not similar. Identical. Because they were the same letters. Cordelia's old letters to Cassian, with Elspeth's name carefully inserted in place of Cordelia's. "Who did this?" Alaric demanded. "I do not know for certain. But 6 months ago, a man came to me, offered me money for access to Cordelia's letters. He said he was writing a book about society scandals. I was desperate, dying, broke. I sold them. Who was he? He gave a false name, but he mentioned Silas Rowan several times, said Rowan owed him money, and he intended to collect one way or another." Alaric's hands shook as he held the letters. Elspeth was innocent. The entire time she was telling the truth. Most likely. Though I suppose there is a small chance she actually did betray you. Cassian's smile was bitter, but I doubt it. You do not inspire passion, Alaric. You inspire duty, and duty rarely leads to adultery. Why tell me this now? Because I am dying, and I am tired of carrying other people's sins along with my own. Cassian closed his eyes. Cordelia betrayed you, but she also loved you in her way. She wanted excitement, not cruelty. If she knew her letters were being used to destroy another woman, she would have hated it. Alaric carefully placed the letters back in the box. Thank you. Do not thank me. I am not doing this for you. I am doing it because letting an innocent woman suffer for my dead lover's words seemed like the kind of thing that would doom my soul, and I have doom enough already. It is heartbreaking to see Elspeth suffering in the cold while so many of you watch her story without offering a hand. Every day, we spend hours crafting these emotional journeys for you, yet many of you leave without subscribing. If you appreciate the effort and do not want Elspeth's struggle to go unnoticed, please subscribe now. Do not be like the Duke. Do not wait until it is too late to show your support. Alaric found Silas Rowan at his club, drunk and dishevelled, losing at cards to men who laughed behind their hands at the fallen Viscount. You, Alaric said quietly, and the room went silent. Silas looked up, his face flushing. Your Grace, I did not expect to see you here. Step outside, now. They went into the cold night, and the moment they were alone, Alaric struck him. Silas fell into the snow, blood streaming from his nose. You knew, Alaric said. You knew the letters were false. I do not know what you mean. Alaric hauled him up by his coat. Thaddeus Blythe, Cassian Moorcroft. The letters. You knew your daughter was innocent, and you said nothing because Blythe promised you what? More gambling money? A seat at a better table? Silas's face crumpled. He said he would ruin me completely if I spoke. I had no choice. You had every choice. You chose money over your daughter's life. She is a duchess. She has everything she needs. She has nothing. Alaric threw him back into the snow. She is alone in the Highlands, pregnant and abandoned, because you are a coward who sold his own child for cards. What are you going to do? I'm going to get my wife, and if she is dead, if that child is lost, I will make sure you hang for it. He left Silas sobbing in the street and returned to Ashcombe immediately. By dawn he was on the road north, his carriage packed with supplies, Dr. Harrow reluctantly accompanying him, and a growing dread in his chest. The journey that had taken Elspeth 5 days took Alaric 3. He pushed the horses hard, stopping only when absolutely necessary. As they drove deeper into Scotland, the weather worsened. Snow began to fall heavily on the second day. By the third day, it was a blizzard. Your Grace! The driver shouted over the wind. We need to stop. The horses cannot continue in this. How far to the lodge? 20 miles, perhaps, but the roads are disappearing. Keep going. They made it another 5 miles before the carriage tipped, one wheel catching in a hidden ditch. The vehicle tilted sharply, throwing everyone sideways. When they climbed out, Dr. Harrow assessed the damage grimly. The axle is cracked. We cannot fix this here. Alaric looked at the white wasteland surrounding them. Somewhere ahead, through the storm, was the lodge. Somewhere ahead was Elspeth, if she still lived. How far can we walk? He asked the driver. In this weather? Not far, Your Grace. We should shelter with the carriage and wait for the storm to pass. No, Your Grace, it is suicide. Alaric pulled his coat tighter and started walking north. Then I will die trying. But I will not wait here while my wife and child freeze to death because of my pride. Dr. Harrow and the driver exchanged glances, then followed. They walked for hours. The snow came so thick they could barely see 10 feet ahead. The wind cut through their clothes and stole their breath. One by one, they fell behind. First the driver, who could no longer feel his feet. Then Dr. Harrow, whose age made each step an agony. "Go back," Alaric told them. "Get to the carriage. I will send help when I can." "Your Grace," Dr. Harrow protested, "you will die out here alone." "Then I will die knowing I tried." He left them and pushed forward. His legs grew numb. His hands lost feeling. His lungs burned with every frozen breath. But he kept walking, because the alternative was unthinkable. When his legs finally gave out, he crawled. His gloves tore on hidden rocks beneath the snow. His knees bled through his trousers. But he crawled, inch by inch, following the single narrow track that he prayed led to the lodge. He lost track of time. The world became nothing but white and cold and pain, and the desperate need to reach Elspeth before it was too late. Then, through the storm, he saw a shape, dark stone against white snow, a building, the Lodge of Thorn. He crawled the final 100 yards, his vision dimming, his body giving up, until his frozen hand touched the wooden door. He tried to knock, but had no strength. He tried to call out, but had no voice. So he simply fell against the door and prayed someone inside would hear. Inside the lodge, Elspeth screamed. The pain had started hours ago, a dull ache that she tried to ignore. But it had grown steadily worse, until now it consumed everything. Mrs. Crowell was beside her, her face calm, but her eyes betraying her worry. "You are doing well, child. Breathe through it." "Something is wrong," Elspeth gasped. "It is too early. Only by a few weeks. The baby will be small, but should be strong." Another wave of pain crashed over her, and she gripped Mrs. Crowell's hand hard enough to bruise. Outside, the wind howled like a living thing. And somewhere in the lodge, something crashed. "Dougal!" Mrs. Crowell called. "Check the windows." The groundskeeper appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "The east window has shattered, the one in the sitting room. Snow is coming in faster than I can block it. Leave it. Stay with her Grace. I will handle the window. You cannot go out there alone." "I am not asking permission." She pressed a cloth into Dougal's hands. "Keep her comfortable. If the baby comes before I return, you know what to do." She left, and Elspeth found herself alone with a terrified young man who looked like he might faint at any moment. "I am sorry," she managed between contractions. "You should not have to see this. It is all right, my lady. I helped with my sister's children. I know a bit." Another pain, stronger than before. Elspeth felt something shift inside her, and she knew the baby was coming, whether they were ready or not. "Get Mrs. Crowell," she said urgently. But before Dougal could move, there was a tremendous crash from the direction of the door. He ran to investigate, leaving Elspeth alone in the bedroom, her body betraying her, her strength failing. She heard voices, shouting. Then Mrs. Crowell was there, her face flushed from cold and exertion. "What happened?" Elspeth asked. "Nothing that matters now. We have a baby to deliver." But Elspeth could see something had changed in the housekeeper's expression. Fear mixed with something else. Hope, perhaps. The labor continued through the night. The pain became something Elspeth existed within rather than experienced. She stopped thinking, stopped hoping. She simply endured, because there was nothing else to do. And then, as dawn began to lighten the sky, Mrs. Crowell said, "Push now. One more time." Elspeth pushed with the last of her strength, and suddenly the pain stopped, replaced by a sound that made her heart stutter. A baby crying. "A boy," Mrs. Crowell said, her voice thick with emotion. "You have a son, Your Grace. She placed the tiny, red-faced infant on Elspeth's chest. He was so small, his eyes squeezed shut, his fists waving in outrage at this cold new world. But he was alive. He was perfect. "Hello," Elspeth whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, little one. I am your mother." Mrs. Crowell cleaned them both efficiently, wrapped the baby in soft wool, and laid him in Elspeth's arms. "He is healthy, small but strong. He will grow. Thank you. For everything. Do not thank me yet." Mrs. Crowell's expression turned serious. "There is something you need to know. Someone is here." "Who?" "The Duke." Elspeth's arms tightened around her son. "Alaric is here?" "He arrived an hour ago, crawled to the door, half frozen and barely alive. Dougal is tending to him now." "Why would he come?" "I do not know. But he kept saying your name, kept begging forgiveness." Elspeth looked at the child in her arms. Their son, Alaric's son, whether he believed it or not. "I do not want to see him." "That is your right, but he nearly died getting here. That should count for something." "Should it?" "He sent me here to die. Now he comes seeking mercy when I have none left to give." Mrs. Crowell studied her for a long moment. "You are not the same girl who arrived here 3 months ago. You have become someone stronger, someone who does not need his approval or his love. But that child deserves a father if the father is willing to be one. And if he is not, then you send him back into the snow and raise your son yourself. You are capable of it." Elspeth knew she was right. She had survived the Highland winter. She had given birth alone in a blizzard. She had become someone who could endure anything. But the question was whether she wanted to endure alone. "Tell him he may see the child, but he does not touch me. He does not speak unless I ask him to. And if I tell him to leave, he goes. Immediately." "I will tell him." Mrs. Crowell left, and Elspeth sat in the quiet dawn light, holding her son and preparing to face the man who had broken her heart. Alaric could not feel his hands. "Dr. Breaksir. Harrow said he would likely lose several fingers to frostbite, but all he could think about, as Dougal helped him up the stairs, was whether Elspeth would let him see the child, his son, the baby he had condemned as another man's bastard, without even questioning whether his own cruelty had blinded him. Mrs. Crowell met him at the bedroom door, her expression hard. "She will see you. But there are rules. You do not touch her. You do not speak unless she allows it. And if she tells you to leave, you go without argument. I understand. I hope you do, because if you hurt her again, Duke or not, I will put you back in that snow myself." She opened the door and let him enter. The room was warm, the fire burning brightly. And there, in a chair by the window, sat Elspeth. She wore a simple nightgown, her hair loose around her shoulders, and in her arms was a bundle of wool that moved slightly. She looked different, thinner, her face more angular. But her eyes were what shocked him. They held none of the softness he remembered. They were hard, clear, and utterly unforgiving. "Alaric," she said quietly. "Elspeth." His voice broke on her name. "I am sorry. I am so sorry. Why did you come?" "Because I learned the truth. The letters were forgeries. Cordelia's old letters with your name inserted. You were innocent, and I condemned you anyway. I told you I was innocent. You did not believe me. I know. I was wrong. I was cruel. I was so afraid of being made a fool again that I destroyed the only good thing in my life." Elspeth looked at the baby in her arms. "Do you want to see your son?" "May I?" She stood carefully and walked to him. She did not hand the baby over. She simply turned so he could see the small face peeking from the blankets. "He was born 3 hours ago," she said. "He is healthy. He has your eyes." Alaric looked at his son and felt something break inside him. The child was so small, so fragile, so utterly dependent, and he had almost lost him. Lost them both. "What is his name?" "I have not decided yet. I thought perhaps you might wish to have some say, if you intend to acknowledge him." "Of course I acknowledge him. He is my son, my heir." "Is he? Or will you change your mind again when the next convenient lie presents itself?" The words cut deeper than the Highland wind. "I deserve that. You deserve much worse." She walked back to the chair and sat down. "But I am tired, Alaric. Tired of anger. Tired of pain. Tired of wondering if I am worthy of basic decency. You are worthy of everything. I am the one who is not worthy. Not of you, not of this child, not of the mercy I am begging for." "Then why should I grant it?" He had no answer. Nothing he could say would undo the months of suffering. Nothing would erase the fear she must have felt, alone in this frozen place, abandoned by the man who had sworn to protect her. "You should not," he said finally. "You should send me away. Raise our son without me. Find someone who deserves your kindness, because I never have." Elspeth was quiet for a long time, studying him with those hard, clear eyes. "Mrs. Crowell says you crawled through miles of snow to get here," she said at last. "I did. Why not wait for spring? Why risk your life? Because I could not live with myself if you died thinking I hated you, if our son was born believing his father did not want him. And now? Now I would give anything to earn your forgiveness. But I will not ask you to forgive the unforgivable. I will only ask that you let me know this child. Let me provide for you both. Let me prove that I can be better than the monster I have been." The baby stirred in Elspeth's arms, making small sounds of discontent. She adjusted the blankets, her movements gentle and sure. "I will not forgive you," she said. "Not today. Perhaps not ever. What you did was cruel beyond measure. I know. But I will not keep your son from you. He deserves a father, even a flawed one. And perhaps in time, if you prove yourself worthy, we might find some form of peace. It was more than he deserved, more than he had any right to hope for." "Thank you," he whispered. "Do not thank me. Just do better. Be better. For him, if not for me." She stood and walked to the door, opening it to signal their conversation was over. As he passed her, he paused. "What would you like to name him?" She considered. "Alexander. It means defender. I think he will need to be strong. Alexander Vane, a good name." "Alexander Rowan Vane," she corrected. "So he remembers where he comes from, even when the world forgets." Alaric nodded and left the room before she could see the tears in his eyes. Spring came slowly to the highlands. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown earth and the first brave shoots of heather. The roads cleared enough for travel, and Dr. Brett's tore. Harrow finally arrived from where he had sheltered in a shepherd's cottage, his frost-bitten fingers bandaged but healing. Alaric stayed at the lodge through it all. He took the smallest bedroom, insisted on helping with repairs and chores, and spent every moment he was allowed watching his son grow. Alexander was thriving. He gained weight rapidly, his cries growing stronger, his grip fierce when Alaric offered him a finger to hold. Elspeth remained distant, but she no longer sent Alaric away when he entered a room. She allowed him to hold Alexander under supervision. She even occasionally spoke to him about practical matters, like supplies for the return journey or repairs needed before they left. But there was no warmth, no forgiveness, just a careful truce that both of them maintained for the sake of the child between them. One evening in early March, Alaric found Elspeth in the sitting room, mending one of Alexander's small gowns. The fire crackled softly, and outside rain fell in steady sheets. "May I sit?" he asked. She nodded without looking up. He sat across from her, watching her careful stitches. "You have become quite skilled at that. Necessity teaches many things." "It does. You are different than you were." People change when they are forced to survive alone. He wanted to apologize again, but he had learned that constant apologies meant nothing. Only actions mattered. So instead he said, "I have been thinking about the future." "Have you?" "When we return to Ashcombe, I would like you to take your proper place as Duchess. No more separate wings, no more eating alone. I want you beside me, as my wife should be." Elspeth's hand stilled. "Why?" "Because it is right. Because I want to know you. Because I think, given time, we might build something worth having. We had time, Alaric. You used it to destroy me. I know, and I am asking for more time, not for forgiveness, just for a chance to prove I can be the husband and father you both deserve." She set down her mending and looked at him directly. "What makes you think I want you as a husband?" "I do not. But I think you want Alexander to have a real family. Two parents who respect each other, even if they do not love each other. Respect? Is that what you offer now? It is all I have. But I mean it. I respect your strength, your intelligence, your capacity to endure what would have broken most people. I was too blind to see it before, but I see it now." Elspeth stood and walked to the window, her reflection ghostly in the dark glass. "I do not trust you. You should not. And I will not share your bed. I would not ask it. Then what exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership. We raise Alexander together. We manage the estates together. We present a united front to society. And perhaps, if we are both patient and honest, we might someday become friends." She turned to face him. "Friends. After everything. It is a start." She studied him for a long moment. Then she said, "I will agree to your terms on one condition. If you ever doubt me again, if you ever believe a lie over my word, if you ever treat me with the cruelty you showed before, I will leave. I will take Alexander, and you will never see either of us again. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Then we have an agreement." It was not love. It was not even forgiveness. But it was something. A foundation on which they might, if they worked hard and honestly, build something worth preserving. They left the lodge in mid-April, when the roads were finally clear and Alexander was strong enough for travel. Mrs. Crowle accompanied them, as did Dougal, both of them refusing to remain in the Highlands when the family they had protected needed them at Ashcombe. The journey south was slow and careful. They stopped frequently to tend to Alexander, and Alaric found himself fascinated by the small routines of caring for an infant. Elspeth taught him how to hold the baby properly, how to soothe him when he cried, how to change his cloths without fumbling. They were lessons he should have learned as a father in comfortable circumstances, not in coaching inns along muddy roads. But he was grateful for them nonetheless. When they finally reached Ashcombe, the staff lined up to greet them. Finch, the butler, looked relieved to see them all alive. The maids whispered excitedly about the baby, and the housekeeper who had replaced Mrs. Crowle looked offended when the older woman swept back in, and immediately began reorganizing everything. Alaric watched Elspeth walk through the manor she had been driven from. She moved differently now, with confidence and purpose. When servants asked questions, she answered decisively. When problems were presented, she solved them efficiently. This was not the quiet, uncertain girl he had married. This was a woman who had survived winter and childbirth and abandonment, and who would not be diminished by anyone. That night, as promised, she took her place at the dinner table across from him. Alexander slept peacefully in a basket nearby, watched over by a nurse Elspeth had chosen herself. "This feels strange," she said, cutting her meat with precise movements. "Eating together. Being here at all. I did not think I would ever see this house again. I am sorry I made you believe that." She looked at him evenly. "You have apologized enough. Now you must simply do better." "I will." They ate in silence for a while. Then Elspeth said, "I want to visit my father." Alaric's hand tightened on his fork. "Why?" "Because I need to hear from him why he stayed silent, why he let me suffer when he knew the truth. He is not worth your time. Perhaps not. But I need to close that chapter of my life, and I want him to see Alexander, to see what his cowardice almost destroyed." Alaric nodded slowly. "Then we will go together. Tomorrow, if you wish." "No. This I must do alone." Silas Rowan had aged a decade in 6 months. His house was nearly empty, most of the furniture sold to pay debts. He looked up when Elspeth entered his study, his face going pale. "Elspeth, you are alive." "Disappointed." "No, no, of course not. I am relieved." She walked to the window, not trusting herself to stand too close to him. "Alaric told me about Thaddeus Blythe, about the letters, about your silence. I had no choice. You had every choice." She turned to face him. "You chose cards. You chose money. You chose your own comfort over your daughter's life. What would you have had me do? Blythe would have ruined me. You were already ruined. You had been for years. But you sacrificed me to preserve the illusion that you still mattered." Silas slumped in his chair. "I am sorry." "Are you? Or are you just sorry you got caught?" He had no answer. Elspeth reached into her bag and pulled out a small bundle. "This is Alexander, your grandson. The child you almost murdered through your cowardice." She unwrapped the blankets enough for him to see the baby's face. Alexander slept peacefully, unaware of the broken man staring at him. "He is beautiful," Silas whispered. "He is. And he will grow up knowing that his grandfather cared more about cards than family. That truth will be his inheritance from you. Elspeth, please. I came here to tell you that I forgive you." Hope flickered in his eyes. "But I also came to tell you that I never want to see you again. You are dead to me, as I was dead to you when it mattered. If you contact me, I will not respond. If you try to see Alexander, I will have you removed. You wanted freedom from responsibility. You have it. Now live with it." She wrapped Alexander carefully and walked to the door. "Elspeth, wait. Please." She paused without turning around. "Goodbye, Father. I hope your cards keep you company in your old age, since your daughter will not." She left him there, weeping in his empty house, and felt nothing but relief. Summer came to Ashcombe, bringing warmth and green life to the gardens. Elspeth spent hours there with Alexander, teaching him to notice flowers and butterflies, even though he was far too young to understand. Alaric joined them often. He was learning to be a father slowly, carefully, making mistakes, and correcting them without pride. He was also learning to be a husband in the ways that mattered, listening when Elspeth spoke, respecting her decisions, sharing his burdens instead of carrying them alone. They were not in love. Love might never come, but they were building something steadier. Trust, respect, partnership. One evening, as they walked the garden paths together, Alexander asleep in Alaric's arms, Elspeth said, "I have been thinking about Greymore." "The lodge?" "Yes. It served us when we needed it. Perhaps it could serve others." "What do you mean?" "Women in desperate situations, pregnant and alone, escaping cruel husbands, needing a place to be safe. We could turn it into a refuge." Alaric considered. "That would be expensive. We have the money, and I have the experience to run it. I know what it is like to need sanctuary." He looked at her with something like awe. "You would do that? After what you suffered there?" "Because of what I suffered there. That place taught me I could survive anything. Let it teach other women the same. Then we will do it. Whatever you need, it is yours." She smiled, the first genuine smile she had given him since their wedding day. "Thank you." As they walked back to the manor in the fading light, Alexander warm between them, Alaric realized something. He had crawled through snow seeking mercy. But the real miracle was not that Elspeth had granted it. It was that she had used her pain to build something better. She was extraordinary, and if he spent the rest of his life earning the right to stand beside her, it would not be long enough. Before we reveal the final fate of Elspeth and Alaric, please make sure you have liked this video and shared it with someone who loves a good redemption story. Your engagement helps us continue these narratives. 5 years passed. Alexander was a sturdy boy now, with his father's dark hair and his mother's steady gaze. He ran through the gardens of Ashcombe, chasing butterflies, his laughter ringing clear in the summer air. Behind him, his parents sat on a stone bench, watching him play. Alaric's hand rested near Elspeth's, not quite touching, but close enough that the warmth connected them. "He is happy," Elspeth said. "He is loved. That makes all the difference." "Does it?" Alaric turned to look at her. "I hope so. I hope that love can heal the wounds cruelty makes. Some wounds never fully heal, but they can be tended, made manageable." "Is that what we are? Manageable?" She smiled slightly. "We are more than that. We are honest. We are partners. And sometimes, when I am not guarding my heart so carefully, we are even friends. I will take friendship. It is more than I deserve." "Alaric." She finally took his hand, her fingers warm against his. "Stop measuring yourself by what you deserve. Measure yourself by what you give." He threaded his fingers through hers, marveling at the simple intimacy of it. "And what have I given you? Safety, respect, a chance to rebuild what you broke. That is not nothing. It is not everything. No, but it is enough." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their son play in the gardens where she had once stood alone and uncertain. The Highland winter was a distant memory now, but its lessons remained. Strength was not avoiding pain, but enduring it. Love was not passion, but patience, and mercy was not forgetting cruelty, but choosing kindness anyway. Alaric had crawled through snow for forgiveness. But what he found was something better, a partner who would walk beside him, holding him accountable, challenging him to be better, and building a life worth living. As the sun set over Ashcombe, casting golden light across the manor, Elspeth squeezed his hand gently. "Come, let us bring Alexander inside. It is getting late." Together they called their son, and together they walked home through gardens that had finally learned to bloom. Thank you for joining us for this emotional journey into the heart of the Highlands. It is a reminder that even the coldest hearts can be thawed, though the price of redemption is often steep. We hope Elspeth's strength inspired you today. Make sure to stay tuned for our next video, where we explore a new tale of betrayal and triumph in the Regency era. Subscribe to see how stories like this unfold, and comment where you are watching from. I would love to say hello to you, just to know how far our story is going. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next story.